Welcome to Rev Up Your Leadership with Hilda Gann, the podcast for forward-thinking, proactive leaders who believe in a people-centric approach to business. Whether you're an executive, a seasoned manager, business owner, or a novice manager, this show is for those who know that putting people first drives real, lasting success. Each episode, I sit down with passionate guests, leaders who share real-world experiences, proven frameworks, and insights from their industries. Together, we explore what it takes to lead with impact, stay ahead of the curve, and build thriving, future-ready organizations. If you're ready to lead with purpose, inspire your team, and think strategically, it's time to rev up your leadership and rev up your success. Welcome to another episode of Rev Up Your Leadership. This is part 2 of a series that Jill McPherson and I are doing. Jill McPherson is an educator and facilitator who helps people communicate with more courage, compassion, and clarity. She's trained in nonviolent communication and works with teams and leaders to build trust, navigate conflict, and shift out of power over dynamics that quickly block connection. Whether she's leading a workshop or having a tough conversation, Jill's all about turning power struggles into shared understanding and finding the words that connect even when it's hard. Today we're going to talk about power with, not power over, leading with compassion, clarity, and connection. It's talking about healthy work cultures. What happens to your manager or leader when they're not quite easy to get along with? Part 2 is focused on leading upward, staying grounded when leadership above you is tough. Welcome, Jill, and thank you for coming. And we're going to talk about part 2 today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love this conversation, so I'm excited.
I'm excited as well. Last time, for those of you who haven't listened, last time we talked about power with rather than power over. And maybe we can start again for those who hadn't heard session 1, and I encourage them to go back and listen to session 1. What is power with versus power over?
Yeah, great question. It's really focusing on understanding that for most people, myself included, we're very much educated to be in a hierarchical structure, whether it's the home, whether it's school or the workplace, where there's people who are of a position higher on that hierarchy have power over people underneath. And as much as that kind of sounds lovely for the person at the top, it actually is quite stressful, as many leaders listening here know. And there's paradigms, there's belief systems that keep us in this structure of power over. And many of the challenges that people are experiencing at work are because they're trying to control the people underneath. So it's a control-based structure. I help people to understand those belief systems and that they are actually at the root and the cause of the symptoms that they want help with. And instead, I help them to reframe a workplace where there's still a hierarchy, but it's a hierarchy of responsibility, not control. And so how can leaders facilitate things like responsibility, problem solving, collaboration in a power with? How can we disperse the power so that we work collectively and collaboratively?
I'll briefly mention this time that what you shared with me resonated so much with what my husband and I did when we had our engineering company, iTrans. And the Rev Up stands for 5 acronyms, and the equality piece is what resonated when you mentioned that, because we never had an organizational chart for the first 3 years. We refused to write that because we didn't feel there was this power over under. So we just said we're all valued. And in hindsight, I coined the phrase Rev Up, and Rev Up is equality, is the E. And that's where we said everybody's role is equally important. So there is technically no hierarchy, and therefore no org chart was written until we kind of had to for proposals. And then for people who said, well, so who's my boss? And we said, really? So we did it for that reason. Yeah. And you and I talked about the fact that oftentimes, people who are seeking to be good leaders will work towards trying to find, how do I motivate, uplift people? How do I create this sense of equality in a relationship? But oftentimes they do it, but their managers are not that role model for them. And they find it difficult to navigate trying to create that relationship. So I said, this is great. We need to do a second part and now talk about how do you, as an employee, as a staff member, whether you're a technical staff person and you've got your manager, or you're a manager and they have their managers. Today's focus is on how do we help ourselves to create that healthy relationship with that person who is not an ideal role model.
Yeah. And this is such a powerful question because this is kind of one of the biggest, I'm going to call it yeah buts I get when people are, oh, I see what you're doing. I understand this is really great, but, and a lot of times the but is the challenge with somebody superior. So this isn't really going to work because if I don't get the superior on board, why even bother? And I would say this is more important than ever. If you have somebody difficult or challenging for you that's in a supervisor or a higher role, these are definitely the skills that will help you in that situation as well.
Yeah. So, I really want to help people because so many of them feel that way, and it's very difficult. I think when my husband and I had iTrans, we really thought we have the ability, we and the other managers have the ability to let people go home at night and feel like they had a great day, and that feeling then passes on to the home environment or the friends that you have, that you too can spread that sense of relaxation and enjoyment of life beyond the workplace. So when you have tensions at work, that carries on again to go past the work part of the day. So again, you have 3 strategies for leaning upward, as you did for the other session that we did prior. So what is that first strategy that you would share with us, Jill?
Yeah. Well, the first is really recognizing that empathy is not agreement. And I keep inviting people to get either compassionate, curious, or empathetic when there's a triggering person. But even prior to that, I just want to insert is that we cannot give what we don't have. So the first actually step is empathizing with yourself, is finding safe places to, people could call it venting, but really just detoxing those painful thoughts and beliefs that often are shamed. It's like, oh, you shouldn't think that way, you shouldn't do that way. Well, if this is what's alive in me, I'm going to find a safe place to really let that out. And when we let that out, it kind of clears our glasses. So I often, again, I'm just going to grab, when I'm doing workshops, I always have a pair of sunglasses because I want to use this as a demonstration that when we are upset with somebody, the stories we have about them blur our ability to connect. It's like, so if I put these on and say, the room is dark. And what do you mean? Like, doesn't everybody see this dark room? No, this is what's in your lenses right now. I.e., this manager is so difficult to live with. He, to work with. He's like blah 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 blah. So when we first empathize with ourselves of like, this person is very challenging and why are they triggering? And there's a whole process I lead people through to understand that when someone does something and you have a painful emotion, they are not the cause, they are the trigger. And so we follow the trigger to find out.
I like that. They're not the cause, they're the trigger.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. The cause is our internal landscape. It's what's in our lenses. It's what's in our mental, belief systems. And so first is getting really self-empowered to be aware so that you have the internal bandwidth to then have empathy for the person who's so triggering.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's when we get empathetic about someone's behavior. So let's use an example of some unenjoyable behavior. So let's say you have a supervisor who's always checking in. Have you got this done? Have you got that done? Got this done? And it's just like, oh my God, leave me alone, right?
Yes. Yes.
So if I invite you to be empathetic about this person, it's likely not going to go well until you've worked through your own empathy of like what's going on for you, why are you so triggered, what need for you is not being met in the situation. So it's always self-empathy first. And once we've taken care, we've investigated that and got clear, now we can offer empathy. So what need is this person trying to get met by checking in every day about something that's not due for 2 weeks? What need are they needing to trying to get met? And so we start creating space, so we stop taking people's strategies personally.
Right, right. This is a great example because you do have micromanagers, and for people who pride themselves on being reliable and trustworthy and have the skills and the capability to get it done, this is like a trigger every time that person speaks. So what would you suggest people do to try to create a healthier work culture when there's this ongoing tension between what is a micromanager and a person who probably benefits from much more unguided supervision?
Yeah. So from the perspective of, we're taking this from the perspective of the person who has the supervisor who's micromanaging.
Yes.
It's this process is first understanding why it's triggering for you that someone's checking in regularly and micromanaging, and then two, getting compassion curious over what need is this person trying to get met by checking in frequently, not taking it personally, but seeing as it a strategy to get a need met. But unfortunately, we're educated to take people's strategies personally. So if I'm, triggered by micromanaging, it's likely because I'm interpreting this as you don't think I'm competent. My guess is if I get compassion curious over somebody who's micromanaging, I'm guessing that there could be something like my butt's on the line if this doesn't get done. I'll be negligent if I'm not checking in right away. It's my responsibility to make sure that there's no fires before there's fires. And so there could be lots going on for the supervisor for doing that, but there is a reason. Nobody is micromanaging just to irritate people. There is a reason. And so we disconnect from taking it personally, and we get compassionately curious over what needs trying to get met. We're not, and I really want people to hear this, we're not finding excuses. We're not condoning the behavior. It's not like, oh, I see, this is what they need. Okay, so I'll be okay with it. That's not where we go with this. But we can go a lot farther with empathy and compassion than we can with judgment, right? So we want to make a connection and some shared understanding. And we can do that after we've got compassionately curious, empathetic over what need is the supervisor trying to get met by doing X that I don't enjoy.
Yep.
So we shift from being a victim to somebody to being a student of life, student of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So because if we keep taking it personally, then now we are dependent on the supervisor to change in order for us to be happy. And what I invite people is that it's empowering people to work with others without needing somebody to change. It's addressing the internal landscape within us all is where the power lies.
That mental mind shift really can reduce the tension that you feel. And I think it's always understanding what is that person thinking, why, right? Mm-hmm. I remember in my early days, I worked for the hospital, and we would have, these manager meetings. There was always somebody who got up, and even if they didn't know the subject matter, had to talk about it. And this was like kind of bothersome, but later on you realize this is what this person needs to do. Unfortunately, they don't realize they're not the subject matter expert. They don't really need to share this, but this is the way it is. So I think sometimes when you put yourself in other people's shoes, you get that curiosity and you try to understand, you actually become more either respectful, tolerant, or the minimum tolerant of this, so it doesn't bug you as much, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and you can stay there, or we can move deeper if when people are ready. So, leading to my next tip
Yeah.
is separating the stimulus from the story. So the person is doing X, like your example there of like talking a lot about something maybe that they're not an expert in, and this is triggering for people in a meeting, or that want it to be efficient, and like this isn't the time or place. But say this is a repeated pattern of behavior. Okay, first we're going to get clear on why we're what's happening for us and why we're triggered. So there's a whole process for that. Then now we have the capacity to get compassionately curious about this behavior and what needs is trying to get met. Off the top, intuitively, what comes up for me is this is a person who needs some recognition, who needs to feel valued, and they're kind of grasping at straws to do it. If we meet people at the level of need, then the strategy drops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So instead of just, okay, I'm going to learn how to tolerate the strategy, it's, oh, so if this is why they're doing it, and we might not know, and there's a whole, again, way I support people through finding that out and having that difficult conversation to figure out what's behind this behavior and what needs they're trying to get met. If we meet people at the level of need, the strategy goes.
Yes.
Because it's no longer needed.
There's a wonderful children's book, and I can't remember the name because my children are long past the reading of it to them stage. And it's about a little dragon that starts off on the tabletop, and the mother just ignores it. The kid's talking about the dragon, the mother ignores the existence, and the dragon eventually grows to fill out the whole house. And then she finally says, "Enough with the dragon." And then all of a sudden the dragon puffs down to its little tabletop size. And she said, "Why did it have to grow so big?" He says, "Because you just needed to acknowledge it." I'm paraphrasing, right? And that's your story, is that people have a need. And until it's recognized, it continues to be a continual need. And maybe when they get the recognition, they don't feel they have to do it so often.
Yeah, and not even it's amazing how quickly it disperses. I mean, whether I'm working with people in the workplace or in education, time and time again, I was shocked how quickly, when I met people at the level of need and got compassionate curious there, how people worry so much about having these conversations because there has to be some sort of resolution and solution. And that's by sidebar, I get that a lot. But there has to be a resolution. There has to be like a solution. I am, I know people have a hard time believing me in this, but when I help people hear each other, it's amazing how that ends up being all there is needed. There isn't a policy needed. There isn't implementation of like some, strategy. We, in domination culture paradigm, we keep looking for things like policies, procedures, manuals to try to protect us and control behavior. That's exhausting, and it keeps disconnecting us more. So it's amazing how, I can tell people, just trust me on this. When you start hearing each other's needs, often there is nothing more needed. However, I do tell people that in nonviolent communication, one of the principles we do teach is that when two parties can speak each other's needs, the solutions find them. The creativity automatically pops up. It comes very intuitively rather than logically from the head. So it's an incredible experience that most people, in my experience, have not experienced.
And it's just learning a little bit more about each other, because when you understand people, the story behind them, there's this level of understanding and connection that makes conversations not escalate. It creates that level of respect for each other. A little anecdote, I do something called How to Fascinate, and it's helping people to understand their unique communication style, how people see them. And when you do that, when you understand how you communicate and how others, it's much more powerful in terms of the connections you make. And I was brought in, the leader, this is an engineering company, the leader was innovative, out of the box thinker, had ideas flowing regularly. And the engineers under his team, his senior managers, were typical of many, although not all, engineers, that they had this level of trust. They liked predictability. They liked solution-based, that were based on, the regulations and requirements. And so every time he came up with an idea, they would deliver. But then 6 months, 3 months later, he'd come up with another idea and deliver. And what it created was this tension of, we can't do right by him. He's never happy with us. But once they realized he's just a creative person, and he's fine if you say, hey, this idea won't work. He's fine, because he just loves ideas and flowing of ideas. And once they realized that, everybody had a better, healthier relationship. They didn't quickly respond to him and say, yes, we'll do it. They had dialogue. And then they didn't feel like they were not meeting the needs of their manager. So it does make sense to talk, understand each other, and then you can create healthier relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would just say that the challenge that most people have is they're very open to this idea of talk to get to know each other. Unfortunately, we tend to talk through domination culture paradigms. So often conversations can go in the ditch quickly because we haven't been taught how to listen or how to speak in a way that is that our message is more likely received in the way we're offering it. So again, it's teaching the skills of communication, not just, for me saying, well, you need to talk it out. Yeah, there's a whole process. I mean,
I understand.
Again, back to my workshop.
Yeah.
Back to my workshops that, I teach, like, foundation number one is listening, teaching listening skills. And some people, I'm a good listener. And what they don't realize is most people are listening through the frame of how to respond, how to fix. Mm-hmm. Most of our communication strategies for connection are actually disconnecting. So I'll often also do role play with organizations where I role play out some of those common things that people do when, if Hilda comes to me with a challenge, and I will do all those things that most of us do, and everyone starts laughing, and they don't realize that they're actually disconnecting. And so even though we've been educated that, it would be good if Jill and Hilda talk so they can understand each other better, it can easily go into the ditch if we are using our traditional communication skills to do that.
Mm-hmm. It's such a journey to learn to listen, but it really is beneficial. And so in my mind, when I do my teaching, I say, listen for and then listen again and listen some more. And when you think you've got everything you need to know, listen again. Very, very hard to do, but you're right. Some people, particularly people who are instant decision makers, they listen, and they only need 2 sentences, and then they've got the solution and the end of the story. So they really learn to cut people off very, very quickly, very, very quickly. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Rev Up Your Leadership with Hilda Gann. Are you looking to build stronger teams, enhance communication, or lead with a people-first approach? I'd love to invite you to a free 30-minute discovery call to explore how we can help you with strategic HR consulting, leadership training, and team and communication effectiveness training. Visit peoplebrightconsulting.com to book your call. Now let's get back to the episode. Yeah. I love how you say separate the kind of the trigger from the actual story, and your tips and strategies are really, really helpful. That sense of curiosity, the need to listen. These are powerful skills that, again, we haven't been taught. And when we hire somebody or promote somebody within, we aren't looking at the skill set of people connection, people communication, motivation, and and those skills to promote people. We are just looking at the fact knowledge, expertise, their performance with the management of the project, not the management of the team. And oftentimes questions aren't even asked about their leadership style, their skills at being people leaders. People make the assumption that you either have it or you don't. But you shouldn't be leading if this is not a desire of you to help people. I think one of the greatest gifts of being a leader is that you get a chance to help build that person into something that they are dreaming of happening. They want to be. And if they want to be a leader, teaching people to be the best leader. And that is about, people connection.
Yeah. And tragically, I do find that most people, not all, but a lot that at least I work with, lead because they do love people and they don't know they don't have the skills to lead people. So again, their knowledge, content wise, they know the projects that, the information that's needed to accomplish projects. They don't know how to support people in getting that done. Right. So I often think of, my husband has been in construction for like 31 years in leadership role. And he would say time and time again, construction is easy. It's people that's hard.
Yeah.
Because he was not educated either in the skills needed for communication. And my experience is many workplaces, those meetings, those boardroom meetings, those conversations that need to happen continually be about the content challenges. How can we make more money? How can we increase productivity?
Yeah.
And with not being aware that the reason those things aren't happening is because the humans that are driving it are struggling. So stop working on the strategies to make more money and invest in your people so that they're capable of doing the job that you want and support them in being productive.
Thank you. What's your third tip?
Yeah. So when you do have that conversation, so now we've kind of got to the point where you've had that empathy with your supervisor, and you do want to start having a conversation or approach them. It's always about coming at it from your needs, like not coming into like, let me tell you, dear Hilda supervisor, what's wrong with you and what I'm not enjoying about you.
Instant conversation killer.
Yes, right. And again, we're told we have to talk about this, and this is what people will often do.
Yep.
They show up with the frame of what's wrong, and let me tell you what's wrong with you and how you need to change so I can feel better. And instead, it's about, dear Hilda, I'm noticing that I really value being trusted, and I really enjoy responsibility, and I think I'm really competent. And I really also enjoy, clarification when I'm not sure. So I'm wondering if we could, and then you make a request about, not a demand, but, I'm wondering, would you be willing, would you be okay for us to come up with some idea on how, you can also offer some empathy. I'm just going to pause here too. I'm wondering, Hilda, too, I really appreciate how you're checking in all the time because you're so conscientious and I'm imagining you're wanting to make sure like everything's going smoothly. And I really appreciate how attentive you are. And I have this need to be trusted and I really enjoy responsibility. So is there something we could do to come up with a system so that your need to know that everything's fine is met and my need to like feel trusted is met.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's recognizing, coming at it from like what my needs are, and then would you be willing to help support a strategy to meet my needs? And you can have some ideas, but again, I really think it's important for people to realize that when we approach conversations, it's not because I already have the answer and I'm going to dictate the strategy to meet my needs. It's here's my needs. I'm imagining, is these your needs? Because it's great if you can guess the other person's needs, and you don't have to be right because they'll tell you. I always say when I'm coaching people to guess feelings and needs, is it that you're concerned, Hilda, that you have some worry about making sure we get this deadline on time, and yeah, but if that's not it, then you'll go no, and often the answer comes up anyway. So okay, so now I understand why Hilda's checking in every day on something that's not due for 2 weeks. And so I'm empathizing and imagining why she's using the strategy, not taking it personally. And then when I do approach the conversation, I'm approaching from my feelings and needs and a request. Would you be willing, and I'm imagining this is what your needs are. And now would you be willing to find something that works for both of us?
It's that dialogue, and always think of that the way to introduce something in a neutral kind of way, not making it a blame, as you say, that's your fault or my fault, and this is what I need, but offer this is this opportunity to work better together. The phrasing isn't that way,
Yeah.
but that's the goal. But use language that is neutral, that doesn't shift one way, blame in any way, because it's not about blame. It's about working more effectively.
Yeah, and I would shift the word from neutral to owning it, responsibility from a place of not blaming. So you're
Okay.
right.
Gotcha.
I really
More
appreciate.
direct. Yep.
Yeah, to be really, it's about clarity, but a clarity from a place of feelings and needs, not from, as you say, blame. So, and unfortunately, because in institutional education and our culture, people tend to value right and wrong over human connection. So if you're doing something I don't enjoy, I tend to be trapped, people tend to be trapped in a frame of, then you're doing it wrong, Hilda. And now I have to fix you and correct you to make you right. And again, that's a domination culture, power over paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's shifting from Hilda is not wrong, Jill is not wrong. Jill is using strategies to get her needs met. Hilda's using strategies to get her need met. There's some strategies that we're both not enjoying, or one person's not enjoying the other. And how can Hilda get her needs met using a strategy that does work for Jill, or vice versa?
What you have shared in these last two sessions really, I think, is going to help a lot of people be better leaders. Some of your strategies, your training is really effective in helping people do that. What's next for you, Jill?
Yeah, well, my plate is filling up. In fact, I've just hired a business manager because I've got things coming in faster than I can address, and I'm also working on content with stuff as well. So now I have somebody helping me with taking in all those inquiries and following up on leads. But yeah, mainly my passion is speaking to large groups of people. Workshops continue to still be my number one, and I love doing in-person ones. I'm actually going to be traveling to New Orleans in the fall to do a workshop speaking event in New Orleans, educate for educators. And I'm continuing to help businesses. I have a business right now that's looking to get support on a feedback system. So I'm going to help collaborate and create that with them, and then implementation. And of course, I'm still seeing a few one-to-one clients in between when I have the time. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff happening. I think the number one thing I really want to iterate is that the people who reach out to me for support are the ones that are willing to do the internal work.
Right.
If somebody just wants a checklist on what to do to solve problem A, I'm not your person. I'm the person, if you want to go inward, to be self-empowered, to develop your own skills, and to sort of declutter the belief systems that are creating the problems you're trying to put out.
I love that emphasis, because some people will say, hey, I got a problem, fix it. Whereas the fixing is a lot more complicated, and it really does deal with human connection and human behavior, and helping people be, more of who they can be, because they understand how they come across, how they relate, and some of the things that have triggered them in the past. So really appreciate that. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's easiest is to just go to my website, jillmcpherson.com, McPherson MC, and but I'm all over social media as well, so you can find me there and message me through those platforms as well.
Well, thank you very much, Jill, for coming and joining me and really illuminating how people can be better leaders. And it starts with really creating that healthy connection and communication, and this term nonviolent communication and this power with connecting with people versus the power over dominating others. So just loved our conversations and our two-parters. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That was fun.
I like that. People always say it's fun. So, and I agree. It is a conversation, and hopefully what we've shared really helps you as business leaders move forward in a way that will make you a better leader. And whether it's in business or, in other venues, even as a parent, because we talked about the power over as a parent, if it help you in your personal life, be that better person to others that you connect with. That's meaningful. That's meaningful for
Yeah,
you and me.
Yeah, and I just want to add, that's what I tell everybody. Like, these skills I'm teaching, it's not just the workplace. You take these home and it's life changing. I do parenting workshops now and then as well, and it's the same skills. So whether that's a workplace, education, or home, it's the same skills.
It is. Thank you very much. And for those of you, give it a thumbs up if you like this, and subscribe if you haven't already. There's so many topics that I cover and amazing guests who can really help you rev up your business. Thanks again. Thanks for tuning in to Rev Up Your Leadership with Hilda Gann. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date with our latest episodes. For more leadership and HR tips and strategies, and to learn how you can create a people-centric workplace, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.